With the NBA offseason being pretty much over, barring any large trades, and there could be one or two, we'll still see how that pans out. We know there's a lot of teams active on the trade market. Capture the flag is about to be in full swing. But barring any trades, the offseason is pretty much over, and now we have some definite winners and losers, and that's what this video is about. We got 3 winners, 3 losers. We're going to go over them. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like, subscribe if you haven't already. Lots of my viewers are not subscribed. But without further ado, I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get right on into it. So at number 3, there's no order for these teams, but one of my first loser that I have on the table is the Chicago Bulls, and I think this is pretty obvious. They have had one of the worst off seasons this year, and have just been so poorly managed. One of the worst managed franchises in the past few years. After one playoff appearance where they had DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball, Nikola Vucevic, Alex Caruso, a team that really looked like they could compete for years to come. They had great young pieces, veterans. This team was super well rounded. They just couldn't get it done. That they lost in 5 games to the Milwaukee Bucks, and then they just couldn't stay healthy. I mean, we know the whole Lonzo situation has been horrible. Really hope he's able to make it back on the court, but a lot of it also, LaVine couldn't stay healthy either. So by the last 2 seasons, really, DeMar DeRozan was carrying the heavy load of this team, and it just wasn't enough. Yes, DeMar was going to be enough to keep you winning basketball games and keep you around that play-in line, but that's as far as they got. They lost in the play-in this year, and so they kept settling for being a play-in team, and everyone knew that it was time for the Chicago Bulls to hit the reset button and become sellers. But they did it horribly. Quite horribly. And it started when they traded Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. Straight up. I don't know if Sam Presti has some sort of blackmail on all the GMs or something, but how did this man managed to fleece them so hard that they got a all NBA level defender for Josh Giddey, whose weakness is basketball? A few days later, after that trade, DeMar is up on stage with Kendrick Lamar singing Certified Lover Boy, Certified Pedophiles, and he was out. We know that was his last straw. But surely they could have gotten a first-round pick for DeMar DeRozan, right? Right? He's DeMar DeRozan. He was an MVP candidate 2 years ago and still one of the most efficient players in the league. They at least got a first-round pick for him. No, they didn't. They settled for Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks. Chris Duarte. Their tank season is on. Matas Buzelis is going to be a fun piece. If Lonzo can come back healthy, he'll also be fun. It's interesting to see what they're going to do with Zach LaVine. I know there's teams who are interested. Specifically, I know the Golden State Warriors may be a team that's hot on the market. I know they're trying to dump off Vooch. They are trying to dump off Lonzo Ball. So at this point, they are hitting that full reset button, and now they're going all in. But this just wasn't the way to do it. Their name is in the Capture the Flag sweepstakes, and it isn't going to be a fun season for Bulls fans this year. My second loser, it just kept getting worse for this team. After a bar was set so low, the offseason bar got lower, and that team is the Detroit Pistons. Early in the offseason, they went ahead and sent Monty Williams away, and they paid him $65 million to not coach the Detroit Pistons. If that was me, I'm not even grabbing my stuff. I'm just asking, I'm out. I'm out the door. So Monty was the scapegoat, though, for a god-awful roster that they had assembled that included so many young prospects with no experience, and there was just no spacing. And towards the trade deadline, they traded for Simone Fontecchino, which was a good get. And that has been one of their better moves of the offseason as they re-signed him for 2 years, $16 million. But besides Cade Cunningham getting a well-earned rookie extension that's worth up to $270 million, which also now makes him around the same amount of pay as Franz Wagner, those are really the only 2 good moves that Detroit has made this offseason. Because, first of all, whoever Tobias Harris's agent is, give that man a statue. Because how on earth did he convince them to pay him $25 and $26 million over the next 2 seasons? I mean, for $26 million, I'll go shoot a bunch of threes in the corner and miss them. Please, put me in the game. But it somehow got worse. Last season at the deadline, they traded for Quentin Grimes, which is a pretty underrated get. They sent away Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks, and that could have been a fun guard to play around Cade Cunningham. He shot the 3-ball well, and he was a very underrated defender. He got active in the passing lanes and caused turnovers, but they sent him out the door for Tim Hardaway Jr. Tim Hardaway Jr. Yeah, there's not much I can say about that. Grimes was young on a $4 million contract and provided the catch-and-shoot tendencies that they're thinking that they're going to get in Hardaway. And like I said, he's also a significantly better defender. Overall, you just couldn't think the bar could get worse. They had an interesting draft by selecting one of the higher upside prospects in Ron Holland, but that still doesn't solve the spacing issue that they still have. So Detroit is really in a bad spot, and it can't get much worse, but yet it did. This team won 17 games last season. It's not going to be fun for Pistons fans as well this season. And my third loser, the team in shining lights, the Los Angeles Lakers. Every offseason, it's the same story. How they think they are going to get everybody. And they had high hopes to land big stars in a free agency that had those stars to land. LeBron James opted out of his player option in order to take a pay cut and bring in some star players. And let's go through the list. Paul George? No. DeMar DeRozan? No. Klay Thompson? No. Buddy Hield? No. LeBron took a pay cut to make the roster better, and Rob Pelinka was asleep the entire moratorium period, and they signed nobody in a Western Conference that's only getting better. In 2 consecutive years, they've been swept by the Denver Nuggets, and they've been competitive series, but they're settling. What made the Lakers' title run in 2020 so possible was that they had good role players surrounding LeBron and AD. They had KCP, they had Alex Caruso, Dwight Howard, Rondo, Kyle Kuzma. And ever since the Russell Westbrook trade, the Lakers have failed to acquire a third star or the reliable role players to form a championship team. D'Lo played better than expected last season. Austin Reeves is becoming a fun, young, thriving guard who can be a little electrifying. And Rui Hachimura was a good get for them a few years ago too. But this team just isn't deep enough, and they're okay with being a first-round exit. Now, Dalton Connect, that is their biggest move of the offseason, but he fell to them at 17 where he really shouldn't have, but he can be a really great get. Obviously, we know what he can do. He's one of the best scorers in this draft, one of the best shooters in this draft, and that's something that the Lakers needed. But what needle does that move for them? It literally moves nothing. It really does nothing. And then the Lakers drafted Bronny. Congrats to him. Truly, it is one of the coolest things in all of sports. But what does that do? Really? What does that do for you in the upcoming season? LeBron James is 40 years old in December. This team is not getting any younger, and they continued to do nothing in a Western Conference that's only getting better. Denver still runs it. The Clippers will still be better than them, but the Grizzlies are coming back. The Spurs are going to come up. The Mavericks. Those are just a few teams that I can think of off the top of my head. The Pelicans should be good. They're not on this list, but the Pelicans, they got DeJounte Murray. I mean, the Timberwolves, the Thunder, Phoenix is still better than them. Come on, Rob, you got to do something, man. Ever since you've got into LA, you haven't done anything notable that's brought the Lakers success. But hey, you got the championship in 2020. They sacrificed it, but it's okay. Now, let's move on to the winners. My first winner is the youngest team ever to win a number 1 seed, and that is the Oklahoma City Thunder, because in a year where they were the youngest team in the league, they were the number 1 seed in the toughest Western Conference we'd seen in nearly a decade, and there was only a few moves that they needed to address in order to get better, and they did both of them. The first move was getting rid of Josh Giddey. I won't get too into it, but obviously I already talked about it, because how did he pull that off? Good question. You replace Josh Giddey with an all-NBA level defender, which is something they were missing, and he can actually shoot the three-pointer consistently. The second move was to get another big, because they did not have a big who could rebound well. I think Chet Holmgren's most natural fit is going to be at the 4, where he can stretch the floor. That was a tongue twister. Stretch the floor, shoot the threes, and then on the interior, obviously, he's going to be a DPOY type of player, but they didn't have someone to rebound the basketball. Obviously, Chet wasn't a fantastic rebounder, and Jalen Williams wasn't either, and so then they go out and get Isaiah Hartenstein. They might have had to overpay him a little bit, but it was worth it because that was the move that they needed. And now it'll be interesting to see what Mark Daigneault does, because there's a lot of options that he can go with for his starting lineup. He can go Shea, Caruso, Dort, J-Dub, and Chet and bring Hartenstein off the bench. Or does he run Shea, Caruso, J-Dub at the 3, and then Chet at the 4 and Hartenstein at the 5 with Lou Dort coming off the bench? It's going to be interesting to see what he's going to do. But not only did they hit home runs in free agency in the trade market, their draft was fantastic. They got one of the most polished passers in Nikola Topic. Then they got Dylan Jones and AJ Mitchell, who are hooping in Summer League. Sam Presti put on a masterclass this offseason, and they should be one of the favorites to come out of the Western Conference. My second winner also is a young team out of the Western Conference, and they're coming off an NBA Finals run, and it's the Dallas Mavericks. Nico Harrison also decided to put on a masterclass this offseason. He replaced Tim Hardaway Jr. with Quentin Grimes, replaced Derrick Jones Jr. with Najee Marshall, and replaced Josh Green with Klay Thompson. The biggest splash for them was bringing in Klay, and don't let this distract you from the fact he went 0 for 10 in an elimination game, but they're able to bring in Klay for $50 million over the next 3 years. That is significantly cheap, and if he shoots 40% from 3 like he did last season, it's going to be a good get for the Dallas Mavericks. He's looking to revive his career, and a new change of scenery is exactly what he needs. It's time for him to move on from Golden State. Obviously, he had a terrible way to close out his tenure there, but now he could be rejuvenated, and if he hits anywhere from between 4 to 6 threes a game on 40% from the season, Dallas will get exactly what they paid for. And then I talked about it earlier with the Detroit trade, but they were able to bring in Quentin Grimes by giving up Tim Hardaway Jr. and 3 second-round picks. I don't know how they managed to pull that off, but that was a huge upgrade. Tim Hardaway Jr. was someone who could not step up in the playoffs, and now you're going to get someone who shot about 35 to 40% from 3 last season, who is going to play significantly better defense, who's going to create turnovers. And then the checks keep on hitting for the Mavs whenever they picked up Najee Marshall for a very cheap $27 million contract, who is one of the better defenders in this league, and he can cause havoc all around the floor. He's versatile, he's mobile, and he also creates turnovers like Grimes. On offense, he takes care of the ball, can bring it downhill. He utilizes his size and strength, and he can get to the cup with physicality, and he also shot 39% from 3 last season. Now, it is a little bit of a loss that they don't have that vertical threat that they had with Derrick Jones where they can just lob it up to him. But Najee Marshall can do a little bit of everything for the Mavs. Overall, this was a great offseason for the Mavs. The Luka and Kyrie tandem worked to perfection last season. This was a team that got to the finals, and now they just got better. My last winner is a team out east, and they made arguably the biggest splash of the offseason, and it's the Philadelphia 76ers. Some of the biggest losses for them this season was Buddy Hield and DeAnthony Melton, but in hindsight, they will be just fine because Paul George is headed over there to Pennsylvania, but to a big-time contract. And then this forms one of the best big threes in the league. Maxey, George, and Embiid. They can do some serious damage for as long they're together. Now, while that was their most significant move, they did a good job at keeping a reliable supporting cast around their stars by bringing in more shooters. They brought in Eric Gordon and Caleb Martin, some of the more underrated signings, but one of the most under-the-radar ones was bringing in Andre Drummond on a very cheap deal. 2 years, $10 million, $5 million annually, because the biggest roadblock they faced last season was Joel Embiid being injured. He missed the chunk of the season with that torn meniscus, or I can't remember what it was, but he tore something in his knee, and he was out for a large chunk of the season, and Maxey was enough to keep them afloat. And now that they have George, if Embiid goes down because he struggled with health through most of his career, Maxey and George will keep this Sixers team contending. But with Drummond, they can have a reliable big off the bench who can control the glass on both ends of the floor. He'll play some pretty important minutes off the bench, and if Embiid happens to get injured again, because that has been a problem, he can be a solid starting caliber center. At the end of the day, it just comes down to landing Paul George. They have a true third star that replaced Tobias Harris. They finally got him out the door, and they replaced him significantly with Paul George, which is what they desperately needed. Losing Buddy is going to show because he was a great shooter off the bench for them, but I think Caleb Martin can kind of play that role, and Eric Gordon with veteran leadership. He's been shooting the 3 his whole career. We know he's done that. But at the end of the day, it still comes down, you have the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference, and they're arguably the biggest winners because they just brought back everybody. But we'll see what happens. If you think there is a winner or loser that I didn't mention, go ahead and drop it in the comments and let me know what you think of the ones that I've hit. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the post notification bell so you never miss when I upload here on my channel. And until next time, this is Ty Talk Sports signing off, and I will see y'all next time.